It's all right.
Okay, here we go. Let me put this there, then that. Good morning, everyone. This is Fran Lewis. This is MJ Network in memory of my sister, Marcia Joyce. And Greg is here, and we're going to talk about this book weighs more than I do. Love Before COVID. This is really unbelievable. The story of I love Joe. I really love him. He's a jazz fan, and he's got an awful lot of girlfriends.
He's got two throughout the book, or
He's
three.
got a whole bunch of them. Let me tell
Yeah.
you. I actually have to be. Oh, this book really. I actually sat down and just read it at one sitting, all
Hmm.
five parts. And then what I
Wow.
did was I went back over each part to make sure that I got it. The way you wrote it, you could almost picture what they're talking about.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you had a visceral embodied experience with it because it was kind of written to create that experience for readers. So
Yeah,
I'm glad that it did that for you. Thank you.
yeah, I did. So, how did you create each of these characters? And Joe is just a normal guy, right? A normal everyday guy. There's got an
Well,
awful lot of women there.
he is somebody that when he was young, was very good looking and buff, and he looked like Marlon Brando in a 50s Kazan film.
Mhm.
And then he gains weight and has an eye patch because of an altercation with the first love of his life, Janet. And his second girlfriend is, on the one hand, happy to be his girlfriend, given how he now looks, but is pretty verbally abusive towards him because of his appearance.
I really like him though. I gotta give the guy credit. And he's not even what you would call like a gorgeous guy. I mean, seriously. And yet he's got all these women falling at his feet. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, well, he's in some ways very paradoxical because he goes through a journey where he has to be with an abusive woman to get
Yeah.
to a point where he's good enough
Yeah.
and secure enough in himself to be with the first woman, which is the woman he needs to be with for the rest of his life. That's his true love. So
Well,
that's what
we have
it's about, really.
Janet. I like Janet in my own way. Pamela and Lorraine,
Hmm.
and they all have distinct personalities. And the distinct dialogue with Joe was like, "Oh my God." I read each one and go, wait a minute. How did each become part of his life? I mean, this guy, it's almost as if they fell at his feet. I mean, seriously.
Well, the first girlfriend, Janet, they fell in love because he was young and hunky, and they were in a class together about T.S. Eliot. So that romance is kind of understandable. The second one is a bit weirder, though. There were some kids that were bullying him in a supermarket who tripped him over and spilled all his groceries all over the floor. And this woman actually helped pick them up and pay for them and said, "I'm so sorry these kids did this to you. They're so horrible." And he said, "Would you like to go out for a drink with me?" And she said, miraculously, yes. So that's how.
Guys got it. What can I tell you? Now, they're all, I mean, this book weighs more, like I said, it weighs a lot. And there's different titles and different whatever, but it's all dialogue. How come we decided to make it like conversations? But I can actually picture what they were saying.
Hmm. Well, I wanted to do something. It was my first novel. So I wanted to see if I could create something that was a bit different to a regular story that normally gets written in a book. So I thought, okay, instead of having the plot move the book, why not have conversation move the book,
Yeah.
where there's very little narration apart from conversation? And so I thought, on that level, it's interesting structurally. But then I thought, okay, what if you have the book actually be philosophical dialogues in the form of conversation, and these things actually propel the plot forward? But you don't notice the philosophical arguments because everything is so angry and so heated and so passionate, like real life is. So that's how the book was born in its current structure.
Well, I could tell you this. I could feel the anger and the passion in the dialogue. I could feel each one, and they each attacked each other, and then he got right back at them, and that was really cool because I like the fact they didn't sit back and take it. which he shouldn't really, seriously. So the chapters
Mhm,
are long and devoted to each person
mhm,
and each character. And what were you trying to tell each of them are different. The first one is Janet, then we have Pamela and Lorraine.
mhm,
Think I got this memorized. And then you had a brand new character. We have Ben Davis and Lana in
mhm.
there too. I was like, okay. And then you go back to the end, and I was like, I had a feeling it was going to end like that, and I was sort of glad that it turned out like that because I don't, this is the first time I've ever read a book like that either. I mean, I've read over 15,000 books in 10 years that I've done this, more than that.
That's amazing. You've read way more than me.
My mother made me read 10 books a week when I was growing up, and I had to take notes on them. So
Mhm.
if you look through the book, it's all that's how I came up with the questions. I mark it up, and then there's a girl in my dermatologist office. I'm going there after she wants the book.
Oh, fabulous. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
they he takes all of them, but she wants the book. What I told her was about I want the book. So who is Davis and what's her story? She comes in chapter 4,
Mhm.
something like that.
Well, Davis is Joe's favorite porn star
Yeah,
that he watches when he's angry with his own girlfriend because she
yeah,
hurts his feelings. So we go into her life in Los Angeles, and we see her meet up with her old friend from high school, Lena, who she tells she's no longer a young mother, an amateur poet, which is what she's always been, and she's become, in a space of 4 years, the most famous porn star in the world. And the
yeah.
conversation is just her and Lena coming to grips with that catastrophic, in some ways, revelation for their friendship. And you see what happens to their friendship when that is revealed, that she's done this and become this thing that Lennon never expected in a million years would ever happen.
Why did she decide to become a porn star? I understood her rationale. I mean, that's okay. That's what you want to be. But,
Hmm.
I know she had a son. So how did the son react to my mother's a porn star? That's so cool. Or was he embarrassed? I like Max.
Hmm. Well, the reason she did it is kind of ambiguous to an extent. It's sort of up to you, um, because the book hints that she's driven by everything, by a lot of narcissism and a lot of sexual compulsion.
Yeah.
So those two things, I think the book hints are something like the reason she does this. But her relationship with her son Max is quite complicated because
Yeah.
he doesn't like the fact that she's doing this, and he really doesn't like that she's doing it in his home. But she's doing it anyway, and he's also trying to keep from her the fact that he's attracted to her, and all of this stuff is just making it worse.
That's hard, I know. And now we come to somebody that started out okay, but I didn't trust her. It was Lana.
Hmm.
I didn't trust her at all. They're friends, but and then Ben and she interferes. So why didn't Dylan? Why didn't she stop? David stop her. It's almost as if she just moved right in. People do
Yeah,
that. I know that.
well, they were all friends in high school, and Ben Davis's wife was originally someone that Lena had a crush on, and Ben and Lena were both 16. Davis was 18.
Yeah.
And the reason why Davis and Ben started a family is because Davis basically raped Ben. She had half of one beer. She got him drunk. He had 8 beers, I think, and a tequila. And she had sex with him without protection when he was barely conscious and couldn't consent. And then afterwards, she said, I'm pregnant and I'm keeping the baby. And he said, well, I have to be a father now and be responsible and marry you. And he was so excited to be with such a beautiful, young, hot white girl, being a Mexican kid,
Mm,
that he didn't even notice or care about the fact that the whole thing started because he got raped. And so Lena, for years, has been angry, like just enraged about this, but also not being able to admit to herself why she's angry. She's been really disdainful of Davis and has, in her own monologues, thinks of Davis as trashy and horrible, but she never puts two and two together and thinks, no, wait a minute, the reason I'm angry with my ex-friend is because she raped the guy I wanted to be my first boyfriend, and that's why they have a family. And all this anger in that
that's
conversation
sad.
comes out.
That is sad. So we have many things now. Max has to stop him from doing something. How does he stop him? And what is the end of their time? That's really weird.
Um, well, the way that the book works is the relationship between Davis and Max gets very, very inappropriate to the point of being
Yeah,
abusive. And when Ben sees that actually his wife is having sex with his son for the
yeah.
first time, rather than be a doormat, which is what he's been up until this point, he gets so enraged he tries to kill his wife. And it's actually Max, the son, who saves her in that scene when he's just gone mad and is trying to kill his wife because he can see that his wife is abusing his son.
It's happened before. It
Yeah,
does happen. Yeah, I know because I taught for a very long time, and I dealt with a parent that did that. I was an aunt that did that to a child. And when the child reported, she wasn't even in my class. She came over and said, "I think I could trust you. My aunt is abusing me. She was raping her." And the kid was 12, and I told the mother, and she got annoyed. And when I turned out to be right, she said, "Thank God I saved her life," because she didn't
yeah.
believe her sister would do that. It happens.
It does happen. It's horrifying.
Yeah,
But it's also something that produces a lot of emotional trauma and a lot
yeah.
of emotional scarring in Max. And then you see how that plays out in terms of the rest of the life he has with his mother, how they relate to each other for the rest of their lives. That's the next part of the book.
So now we have Jody. What's with her and Joe? And I used to do this too. Why does he eat so much?
Why does he eat so much?
What? Yeah, please. I used to do that. I used to weigh 200 pounds. I weigh 95 now. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I lost weight too. The reason he eats so much is because he is emotionally destroyed and distraught by all the tragedy and
Yeah.
trauma of his life and his repressed feelings. And feeding is his only way of dealing with that, until he learns not to.
Well, sometimes people eat from nerves too, and they have nothing better to do, so they just grab something to eat, and they don't realize it. I know. And then you go from 90 pounds to 200 pounds, and go like, how did I get there? And then you walk in like I did to a store, and they said I wear a size 7. The lady said you wear an 18. I was a 22. Now I'm a 4.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
don't realize it. Yeah, it's horrible.
it is, and it's a product of habits and not being conscious of what it is that you're doing, and
Yeah.
just not thinking about it, and then all of a sudden you physically transform in ways that you probably don't like.
Now we have Lorraine, who's kind of like straightforward, and she didn't like the fact that he was eating so much. So how does it change, and what does she try to do? Not that I
Well,
blame her in this sense, but she's kind of crass too.
she's really she's an interesting character because on the one hand, a lot of what she says, not all of it, but a lot of it is true and obvious.
Yeah,
But the way that she says it is so verbally abusive and so mean spirited and
yeah.
cruel that a lot of what she says, which is useful, gets ignored because it's coming in the form of such extreme verbal abuse.
At one point in the book, I'm trying to remember, he just disappears from everybody. Just sort of like leave me alone in a sense. You would sense that he wouldn't even want to talk to anybody after a while because every dialogue that I read, they're coming at him. And when he finally comes back at them, I go, it's about time.
Yeah, well, he's somebody that is very has a lot of difficulty standing up for himself.
Yeah,
He probably retreats into himself rather than deal with other people who are nagging or abusing him. And abuse is something that he's had to deal with throughout his life because his mother, Jody, who you brought up earlier, she was probably the most abusive woman in his life. And every relationship he has gotten into since her death has, in a way, been him playing out the abuse he experienced with her in some form or another with a new woman.
does he work or did he just give up working too?
He's a poet who teaches kids, well, kids or adults, it's not clear, who have learning difficulties in
Yeah.
English classes. So he's a teacher of English and he's a poet.
Now, the character that I met at the beginning that I like, where is Janet at this point? I
Janet
like
is
Janet. I like Janet.
yeah, Janet is a psychopath
Yeah, I know. That's
who
what makes her so unique.
who might be still, despite being a psychopath, a very
Yeah,
good romantic partner for him, at least in her 40s and onwards. Um, and throughout the book, she becomes a famous writer, a public speaker, a vlogger, a painter, a graphic novelist, public intellectual. And she's very charismatic and very well loved, but nobody knows what
she's
that behind
crazy.
she's a psychopath, and no one knows what she did to Joe. But at the same time, throughout her whole life, she's pining for him and waiting for the day that one day he might come back to her.
How do you hide that though? I mean, she had to. Nobody noticed that she was out of her mind. That's scary.
Well, a lot of
That's
psychopaths
what
are
was
very
so
good at
clever
hiding
about
it.
this, that nobody knew that she was crazy.
Yeah, a lot of psychopaths are very good at hiding the fact that they're not neurotypical. And often people find out when it's too late.
So in each relationship, you create a dialogue that's different, and the traits are different. Yet you begin to wonder if they're all the same. I mean, we have Davis, and we have Janet, and we have Lorraine. Lorraine was the most. She was the most difficult one of all.
Yeah, she's quite
And Pamela too, sorta.
yeah, Pamela was like the preamble to Lorraine. It was a
Yeah,
Pamela's a little relationship he gets in between Janet and Lorraine with a woman he's not attracted to who's very combative and argumentative. And then his next relationship with Lorraine is a woman who's absolutely beautiful, who's the most attractive woman he's ever seen, but they have no intellectual compatibility whatsoever. And Lorraine, throughout most of the relationship, is quite verbally abusive towards him.
well, how do people feel about the language? Because it's kind of graphic.
Well, the reason the language is the way that it
Yeah, that's why I was curious. Yeah,
is because it's conversations behind closed doors.
yeah,
And behind closed doors, people say things that they would not say in public.
that's true.
Um, and that's why the language is as graphic as it is, because I wanted it to sound like what people sound like when they're in their homes, and when they feel like no one else is listening.
That's it's really scary. So basically, what happens when he finally comes to terms with Lorraine? And Lorraine is smart. She knew how to manipulate him. She's
Hmm.
smarter than the other ones. She actually got him to do stuff he didn't want to do.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean the scene where she's verbally abusive towards him, you have to keep in mind that that's the
yeah,
first time she's really said, "I hate your weight and I want you
yeah.
to lose weight." So although it sounds like she's been berating him for that for years, she's probably been berating him for other things, and this is the first time she's mentioned his weight. But I think the reason she eventually gets him to lose weight um, is because he sees in himself he wants to lose weight, and he sees in himself that it's not doing him any favors to keep eating the way that he's eating, because it's just ultimately not giving him what he wants in his life, and that's why, in a way, he becomes ready for Janet again when he loses his weight, because that means he's got the self confidence. And he's capable of being with a woman who loves him for who he is without having to change all that much because all the change has already been done. So in a way, there's a kind of weird gratitude towards Lorraine, even though she was abusive. She got him to do enough of the changes he needed to go back with his soulmate, which is what happens in the last part of the book.
Well, she was right in a sense too. I
She
mean,
was what?
being right. I mean, to lose weight is important, and the
Oh,
fact that
very
he
much
was
so.
having
Yes.
trouble. Yeah, I know. My sister told me I looked like the back end of a truck, and she said, instead of eating, why don't you write a book? She was sorry I ever did that because I wrote a book about her growing up with me in the South Bronx.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, these things are very
Yeah,
common. They're very difficult,
yeah.
but there is hope, and you look great. So you've conquered that problem.
Now back to Janet. All he's decided upon, and then all of a sudden he gets a letter from her.
Hmm.
And why does that matter?
Um,
And you don't
that's
know if
her.
it's really true or false because she's crazy.
Yeah, well, that's her reintroduction into his life because she sees online that Lorraine is being quite abusive towards him in
Yeah.
blogs that she's writing, where she's posting naked pictures of him and saying horrendously awful things because she's angry. And then that's when Janet comes back in and says, I think your girlfriend is abusing you. I think you deserve better. And then she starts to tell him everything that she said before again, but without the violence, so that he can be hopefully persuaded by what she was trying to say during their last encounter when she got violent towards him, which is why he's not in contact with her anymore. And she tells him about how she believes unconditional love is bad for relationships and that love should be conditional. And ironically, by presenting herself as being into conditional love and self-interest and all these kinds of things that sound really cold, she winds up conveying emotions in that email that express to him that she still loves him.
Now, this was the interesting part. How did you come up with the titles for each chapter or each
Um,
section? I was like, oh my God. You could almost picture it. Knew what to expect from the title.
yeah, well, with the titles, they were just different ways of clarifying what was going on in each of the arguments.
Yeah.
So one set of arguments is about sex, one is about procreation, one's about romance that has two parts. And I thought this is a book about love before COVID, literally. It's about the years before that and the cultural changes that happened. And so it's about how love is impacting romance, how love is impacting sex and procreation when we are getting increasingly politicized, ideologically driven conceptions of what love is, which is what was happening during that period.
Now, Davis winds up in a different spot. How did you create that? I mean, it's like I'm looking at this chapter. This book like I said, this book weighs more than I do. It says conditioned love. That chapter really got me.
Mm-hmm.
Conditional love. What did you mean by writing that one? And I know it's like that's just no characters. It's just describing it.
Yeah, conditional love is
Right?
the section on the
Yeah.
email, right?
Yeah.
Well, I thought that would be really interesting to do
It
a
was.
chapter that's just an email because we've had dialogues throughout the book up until that point. So that it would be really interesting to do a long email and just have that be the chapter itself because emails are themselves dialogues.
Well,
So,
it's different definitions, and you know what? It's hard to understand. Yeah, given what you know, they may be paranoid. Describe. Yeah, this is interesting, and you wonder sometimes if people. So I don't think people really know sometimes what conditional love is, and sometimes I don't think they appreciate it either.
yeah, it's a difficult one because Janet doesn't like unconditional love and she thinks it
Yeah,
creates abuse in relationships. But you could argue maybe she has some for Joe that she's not aware of.
this is like I said, I couldn't put this down. And then you have the next chapter was unconditional love. What was it? It says romance, unconditional love. What's the difference between that and then romance moving on? I mean, the last couple of chapters sort of like tied it, but not sort of tied it.
Hmm. Well, what I wanted to do in the unconditional love dialogue was explore if Janet is giving you arguments as to why conditional love is bad,
Mm,
you should see in the next chapter why some people would think conditional love is good, unconditional love is good and bad. And what you
yeah,
see in the argument between Joe and Lorraine is there is some unconditional love that seems really pathological. There's other aspects of unconditional love that seem kind of sweet. And they're both there for you to sort of see both sides of, and you kind of have to grapple with unconditional love as a concept.
it can be very devastating when you think that you have unconditional love, and the person turns out to stab you in the back. It's even
Mhm.
worse.
Oh, yes, that's what Joe does to Janet in the beginning of the book. She
Yeah, I
thinks that
know.
she's got his unconditional love, and he's like, "You're a psychopath. I don't want to be with you." So that's how the book starts with the destruction of what was thought to be unconditional love.
So how did you create? Where do all of them wind up? We
Where do
have
all of them wind up?
Lorraine and Pamela and Everdell. Yeah, without giving it away, how do you tie them all back or not back?
Well, to me, they're all different manifestations of his
Yeah.
relationship to his mother. So if you look at the character of his mother, Jody, who comes in towards the end of the book, she has things about her that are like Janet, that are like Lorraine, that are like Pamela, that are like Davis. that are even like Alice in the procreation chapter. So every character is like a different side of his mother that he's trying to deal with throughout his life, and
Yeah.
that's why they come and go in the book the way that they do.
Well, the chapter that really got me was empathy,
Hmm.
because so few people show it anymore for that. So how did you come up with that? How and which characters would show any empathy for anybody? Any of them?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that the book plays with is the idea that the most empathetic character might be Janet, even though she's a
Yeah.
psychopath. And what's interesting about that is there's a kind of suggestion that maybe even if you don't have empathy technically, you can have
Oh,
something
good.
you can have something else inside of you that's close enough to empathy for you to appear more empathetic in a good way than lots of people who have regular bog standard empathy. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that Janet plays with as an idea.
Are you having a sequel to this?
No, I'm writing a second book, which has the same therapist that's in this book, Gillian Adams, but it's got completely different characters.
Oh, goody. Gives me something different to read. I'm reading one which is really sad because Janet might want to go to this. But it was mental health, and it's 7 days in a mental health institution, and I wasn't going to read it. And then
Hmm.
with what's happening in the news, every single news report is about mental health or children that need mental health or something. And I started to read this, and I got so sad. I'm going to do it. I wasn't going to review it because I said I can't. How much can you handle? And then I said the book is too powerful. I can't not do it. The publicist was is so he sent me a whole bunch of stuff that I don't want to read that I wound up reading anyway. But I said, you know what? She deserves to be. It's a true story. He told about her life, and
Hmm.
now she's a writer and she's perfectly sane. They said, but she was a psycho. She tried to commit suicide.
Oh, that's awful. Well, it sounds like it could be a harrowing story. Maybe that's a really interesting book to talk about.
Yeah, and the people in the mental institution that I read the first 10 chapters, they don't care. They just
Yeah, it
give
makes
them.
sense that they wouldn't because
They don't care.
for many decades, care around mentally ill people in those institutions was not anywhere like what we
Yeah,
would imagine it could be or should be.
it's scary. Now,
Very much.
before I forget, I don't want to forget these people. Monday, on the 5th, I am doing something in my own field. I'm a reading specialist and writing specialist. I taught kids with learning disabilities forever. And my reading professor from college is doing a stream with me on prior knowledge, predicting outcomes, and phonics, and how to teach kids reading. And he makes me answer the questions too.
Oh, interesting. Should be a fun thing to explore, I would imagine.
Yeah, he's great. On the 8th, the City of Magicians. On the 12th, Saving Casey. On the 14th, New York Times author Brian Silverman and Freedom Drop. And on the 20th, Alan Jacobson with Dying to Meet You. And I just booked one for October and August.
That's a busy schedule. That sounds like a lot of exciting material you've got coming up.
I can't believe that all these people want to do this. And I was hoping, I just reviewed Uptown Girl by Christy Brinkley.
Hmm.
I was on the list. I was like, okay, it's really good. It's interesting. I'm hoping that sometime in her schedule she'll come on and do a stream with me because that would really make the book is really good. It's
Yeah,
it's
well, if you can get her,
yeah.
I'm gonna go and see if she'll do it. That would be interesting.
Well, it's not only interesting, but some people are gonna like what she will like her, and some people are not when they finish reading it. You're gonna get
Yeah.
two. Yeah,
Well,
she,
maybe there's some interesting moral complexity in the book. Maybe she's got a dark side to her that I'm
yeah.
unaware of. I don't know.
So where will Joe end up? Joe winds up, and David. I like David and Max. So how do you tie these kids at people at the end? What do you do with them?
How do we tie them together at the end?
Or not together at the end?
Well, without giving a spoiler away,
You don't want to give it away, no.
yeah, I would say that they're tied together in the sense that all of them are saying something very important about his mind and his emotions. And that's why they're in the book, and that's why they come in the order they come, and that's why they depart from the stories and the manner that they depart, because they're all in a different way announcing something to him about his own emotions and feelings.
Well, the chapter that I liked at the end, I swear this thing weighs, I weigh 90 pounds, and like this weighs really a lot. Moving on, but the part about part five, love, and love before COVID, but now this is after. So, how did you create that last chapter? Because that's when COVID came in 2020.
Yeah.
I remember, and I remember not knowing why I had a cold or anything. And I
Hmm.
went in, and I had no idea I had it. It was horrible. I had no idea what it was.
Yeah, it was very
It was
scary and
awful.
disorienting. It
Yeah,
was because on the one hand, the virus wasn't like the bubonic plague,
yeah,
and lots of people were saying it really is just like if you're under 40, it's like the flu. If you're over 40, it's a bit worse. But really, it's not going to be potentially dangerous unless you're over 60 or you have medical conditions. But other people were saying, no, this could kill anybody at any time. You're potentially on death's door if you don't wear a mask. It was very confusing and disorienting for those first few months. And so I wanted the end of the chapter to capture that
yeah.
disorienting quality that it had, um, because we didn't know what kind of the world we would have after it was over,
It's
whether
sad.
it would be
Yeah,
completely different. And I think, as it turns out, the world was not all that different after as it was before. But we didn't know that, and that sense of uncertainty and tension and fear is really a big part of that final chapter.
it's really scary because I didn't know I had it, and I just stayed home and slept for a couple of days, and it just made me tired. It didn't do anything awful. I got it because somebody in the bakery had it, and everybody got it. And then
Mhm.
the second time I got it, I didn't know my husband had it. So I went in, he got the flu, and I said, how the hell did I get cold? I didn't even know. I wasn't even sick. And they said you could go out because you had it for 3 days. I go, I did?
Yeah, I
You know
remember.
what? Yeah, you know, it didn't dawn on me that I was supposed to be upset. The only good part is that you don't need to lose weight.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was very
It's horrible.
it was very psychologically disturbing,
Yeah.
thinking I have what feels like a little cold, but it could be this virus that everyone says is potentially lethal that could potentially kill other people or kill me in 5 days if it gets bad. All those things were really, really disturbing psychologically.
Yeah, the vaccine killed me. Phew. The first one was really bad, put me in the hospital. And
I'm
the
sorry to
second
hear
one
that.
was, yeah, it was bad. So they're coming out with a new one. And I'll probably take it as long as I have 3 days that I don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
I don't like vaccines. I don't like pills. I don't like anything. But what that's one virus that you definitely don't want to get ever. And
Yeah,
I'll
I
never
know.
forget it because by my friends in school, the kids have to be vaccinated in New York City, but all the teachers in my old school got it. Every one
Wow.
of them got it,
Hmm.
and the kids got it. And they invited me to come back just a few weeks ago to come into the school to talk to them about learning disabilities and reading and stuff. And I won't go into the school now. I'm not afraid. I was not worried, but I don't know. A lot of them have the flu, virus, whatever, and I
I can
felt
understand
bad.
that. I used to teach
Yeah,
university, and whenever I went back to school in the autumn, I always had some
yeah,
sort of cold or flu within a couple of weeks just
yeah.
from being around so many people. And I taught before COVID, so I don't know what it would be like teaching after COVID.
I love teaching. I loved every minute of it. I never had a problem with the kids, and I'm tough, and I'm little.
Hmm.
And I taught all the kids that were learning, that were behavior problems and double grades. That's what happens when you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if they didn't, and they're on Facebook, so they remind me. But yeah, they remind me constantly, and they can't stay in touch with me. So I know that I taught in the school in the south, in the tough school in the Bronx, but I retired when the new principal came and wouldn't let me do I had a reading room at 6:30 in the morning. Kids
Right.
came in. I was like, "Why are you here?" Because they said there's nobody better than you. I go, "Who
Well, that's
lied?"
great. Yeah.
I cracked up laughing. These kids came from Ghana, Nigeria,
Hmm.
Liberia, everywhere. And they said, we're not leaving until you teach us how to read. This is 6:30 in the morning. I go,
Hmm.
just wait a second. Let me just pour some coffee. And they looked at me and they said, "You could suspend us because we snuck up at 6:30 in the morning." I said, "How did you know I was here?" One of the fifth graders, I said, "Did you better run?" I cracked up laughing, and it happened like for 5 years in a row.
Wow.
And I said to them, "You're doing me a favor because if you're here at 7 o'clock, the principal can't ask me to cover a class at 8 o'clock." So I took them from 7 to 9. Yeah, well, it was an experience. So what about Ben and Lana?
Well, going back to the book, Ben was Lena's high school crush. He got in a relationship with her best friend because
Yeah,
Davis raped him. But Lena's always wanted Ben, and when she sees an opportunity to get Ben after Davis has done
yeah.
something horrible to Max, she goes for it, and then she winds up moving in the family home and becoming the new mother.
That's amazing. So what about Joe? Without giving it away. He
Well,
makes a he makes a life changing decision. I just go like, what?
yeah, well, he makes lots of life changing decisions throughout the
Sort of.
book, and one decision that he makes early on in the book is to watch Davis, and that's why we go into her story with Davis and Lena, and you get to see the woman behind what he's watching and how that relates to his own feelings about his mother, because his mother Jody was a porn star too in the 80s and 90s.
I'm reading the last page. It's like, I said, okay, he really changed his mind about a lot of things. And if he could, if you go on with him again, would he stay with this person?
Well, the logic of the book is that if he is physically okay, if he doesn't
Yeah.
get harmed from COVID, then he will be with Janet for the rest of his life. That's the logic of their relationship.
And just is he still a psychopath?
Yes, and
So
potentially,
that's what makes me wonder, like, what is she going to do next? And how is she going to do it?
yeah. Well, the way that I came up with her was I was reading a book called The Wisdom of Psychopaths, which was about how psychopaths can be CEOs and brain surgeons and all these professions without being Hannibal Lecter or a serial killer, and they can be functional. So I thought, okay, that's an interesting idea for a story. What about a character who is a female psychopath who can still be a good romantic partner for someone? It might take a long time for her to get to the point where she can be that competent as a relationship partner, but by her 40s, she gets there. And that's what her arc is about. It's about how she learns to be a loving human being despite being a psychopath.
So what the second book? What's that going to be about? The next one?
The next one is about two women falling in love.
Oh, that's
One,
okay.
yeah, one is a dwarf who is
Oh,
American, who lives in London, and she is an incel, and she's never had sex, and she finds herself very, very ugly and unappealing. And the second one, the woman that she's falling in love with, is her favorite British porn star, a woman called Lily Parkington, who is
oh,
probably the
nice.
sexiest woman in England. So it's their love story.
When is that coming out?
Next year.
It is
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah,
That's
26.
that's what everybody's telling me next year. It's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
I've read a couple of books that I actually can't wait for them to come out, and then there were a couple of them I said, "It's okay, don't worry, I don't need to read it." So,
Mm-hmm.
how did you come up with the title for this one?
Um, it's really just an extension of the logic of the stories. So everything
Uh,
in the book happens before COVID. And the ending of the book is how COVID will change everything. But what you see in the world before COVID is everything got very political and ideological and involved
yeah.
relationships, and you can see that in what things the characters are saying to each other and the decisions they're making.
The hardest thing was not being able to see anybody. That was the hardest. I couldn't see my family, but I did get to see my hairdresser did my hair in his house. So I wore a
Yeah,
mask. It was fine. Oh, hair and nails is the most important thing in the world. You can't go without that.
I know, I know.
And all the beauty shops were closed. Everything was closed.
Yeah, I remember my wife had to do her own haircut,
Yeah.
and she looked like Richard III when she was done, and we were laughing, but that was part of what lockdown life was like.
I was lucky that he could do it in his house because I said, "Oh my God." The only hard part was that he couldn't do my roots. He couldn't do
Yeah.
the colors in the house because whatever. But thank God he did it last week, so I'm happy now.
Yeah, it was,
It's hard, yeah.
a difficult time, in very practical, ordinary ways, even though it was survivable and everybody went through it. But it was very, in some ways, it was psychologically more disturbing than anything, I think.
You know, what was really different is that people were actually nice to each other.
Sometimes
Pe-
they were, yeah, I
People
remember
were
that.
really, people were different, were nice to each other. And then there were some people that I just walked away from because you weren't sure. And when you're walking down the street, you make sure that you don't. I walk far away from people so that you
Yeah.
wouldn't get it. Yeah, because if you're going in. So where can everybody find out more about you and your work? And I hope I get the next one.
No, well, it's you can go to my website, gregscorzo.com. My books are available on Amazon, Troubadour, which is the company that published the second edition of Love Before COVID. And I'm also on Goodreads if you want to leave a review if you've read anything. And yeah, the next one will be out next year, probably self-published as well, but also probably in collaboration with Troubadour, I suspect. But we'll see. Fingers crossed. And yeah, I'm just trying to write new pieces of work that are exciting and interesting, and hopefully have things in them that are not typical in literature these days.
I write horror. I write pure horror for real. My new title will be out. We hope the
Hmm.
first week of June. Is called Inverted Reality, and it's all about the mirror.
Hmm.
It's five of my books. If you do something wrong, the mirror will face you. You will replay it in the mirror. If you don't listen, you become a face in the mirror forever. It's scary. It's meant to scare people. The one is mirror image. What if? What if this happened? Silent voices. People whose voices were silent, and as a result, what happened? Accusation, and the last one is called the third choice. You have a chance to repent. You have a chance to not repent, and then the third choice is made by something else.
Hmm.
It's scary.
Sounds
And
scary.
it
Yeah.
is, yeah, I'm getting lot of different feedback for it. I gave it to a whole bunch of New York Times authors that are giving me blurbs because they owe me. But it was really, I don't know why. Everybody writes romance and stuff, and I decided to write something that would teach people that they shouldn't do the wrong thing.
Sounds like it could be quite riveting and visceral.
It is different. But thank you so much. This has been fun.
Yeah, I've really
Brightened
enjoyed talking with you.
right now my whole day. Whenever the book comes out, make sure I get it so we could do another one. And I
Definitely, I'd
have to
love to
tell you,
come
this
back.
is the first time I've worked with Rabbit Toys as far as an interview. I couldn't review for them because they never gave me print copies, so I was doing spotlights and showcases. So when Cammy said she had somebody, I got they're the best, Rabbit Toys.
They are very good. I'm very pleased with all the work they've
They're
done.
really good. But everybody